When was the last time you paid an extra $3 at the checkout for free-range eggs, thinking you were giving hens a lush paddock to roam in? Under the official Australian National Information Standard, those same hens can legally be crammed at 10,000 birds per hectare, nearly 7 times denser than the CSIRO welfare benchmark. You walked out feeling like an ethical consumer, but you paid a corporate margin tax for an industrial shed with a cracked door. Eggs are merely the opening scene. By the end of this investigation, you will know how to decode the supermarket duopoly better than 90% of shoppers in this country. I will show you how phantom farm labels invent rustic heritages, why bakery smells come from thawing frozen dough par-baked weeks ago, and how legal loopholes strip real ingredients from your trolley while charging double. We will look at laboratory data from Choice, investigations by the ABC, and regulatory filings from the ACCC across Woolworths, Coles, and ALDI. Stick around to the very end because the most shocking deception on Australian shelves involves an everyday staple where the real origin hides behind a green and gold kangaroo silhouette. Before naming specific brands, understand the machinery behind grocery giants. Margin. Creating genuine, slow-fermented sourdough, authentic extra virgin olive oil, or true pasture-fed livestock requires time, skilled labor, and real estate. Big retail figured out that recreating the aesthetic and emotional language of a premium product costs a fraction of making it properly. They mimic rustic paper, draft soothing copy, slap on a windmill illustration, and pocket the difference. In Australia, this thrives inside a dual legal reality. The Food Standards Code regulates chemical safety and technical declarations, while Australian consumer law monitors whether front-of-pack claims are misleading. Because the two rarely align at the shelf edge, manufacturers design packaging that dances on the legal boundary, while technical compliance is buried in tiny font on the back. If an industrial bakery wants to sell cheap white flour at sourdough prices, they skip the 48-hour starter. They dump commercial yeast into a vat, pump in vinegar powder for the tang, and label it artisan sourdough because the term has zero legal definition here. You get a rubbery loaf that spikes blood sugar, wondering why you feel bloated an hour later. Across refrigerated aisles, industrial ham is pumped with water, sodium phosphates, and curing agents to add mass, charging meat prices for seasoned liquid. Farmed Atlantic salmon flesh turns grey in captivity, so commercial operations select a pink shade off a synthetic astaxanthin color chart and dose feed pellets accordingly. You see a vibrant fillet, the farmer sees a precision chemical formula. Once you see the gears turning, you cannot unsee them. Let us pull back the covers on supermarket shelves, ranking from sneaky legal shortcuts to the most brazen deceptions. In the snack aisle, take Uncle Toby's chewy muesli bars made by Nestlé. Parents trust the brand from generations of wholesome oat imagery. Yet glucose syrup and sweetened condensed milk sit near the top of the ingredients, binding flakes with as much sugar as confectionery. It feels soft, but you pay a premium for syrup dressed in grain. Nutritionist Dr. Rosemary Stanton has cautioned that many commercial grain bars behave metabolically like candy bars, selling cheap sugar under a breakfast mask. At the bakery wall sits Tip Top, the one white bread from George Weston Foods. Families buy it to sneak fiber into sandwiches without whole grains. Underneath the soft crumb lies refined flour bulked with isolated resistant starch and soy flour to meet technical claims. At over $3.50 a loaf, you pay a 30% premium over standard white bread for emulsifiers and isolated powders. As one reviewer noted, it turns into a gummy paste within seconds of chewing, proving you cannot engineer whole food nutrition through an extrusion nozzle. At the deli counter, Cole's Deli hot roast chicken costs around $13. It looks glistening under heat lamps, carrying that classic rotisserie aroma. However, commercial reality involves automated brine injection, pumping water, salt, and sodium tripolyphosphate into raw poultry before roasting. Slicing the breast reveals a rubbery wetness and salty aftertaste rather than roasted meat texture. You pay raw poultry prices per kilogram for seasoned tap water pumped in to inflate scale weight. In the dairy chiller sits Sanitarium So Good almond milk. Sanitarium builds an ethical plant-based image, yet the ingredient declaration reveals almond content hovering at just 2.5%. The creamy mouthfeel comes from vegetable gums like gellan gum and sunflower lecithin, suspended in 95% filtered water. At $3 a litre, you pay over $30 per kilogram for almonds once calculated per serve. It is expensive water with faint nut aroma and stabilizers preventing chalky separation in coffee. In the canned aisle, Edgel's sliced beetroot from Simplot is an Aussie barbecue classic. Shoppers assume these ruby slices are whole garden produce preserved in vinegar. Check the back panel and you find added cane sugar and firming agents, turning root vegetables into a syrup preserve. Each slice leaves a cloying film on the tongue, masking earthy beetroot flavor under processed sweetness. Paying $3 a tin for sugar water processing shows how industrial convenience compromises basic garden produce. If you are already itching to check your pantry right now, make sure you subscribe and hit like, because the systemic loopholes only get rougher. Look at Don English-style leg ham from the deli counter, made by George Weston Foods. Shoppers assume traditional butcher-cured pork legs sliced fresh. Instead, the meat contains added water held by thickeners, carrageenan and mineral salts 451 and 452 to stop injected moisture weeping into packaging. The slices feel rubbery with a slimy sheen and chemical saltiness coating the throat. You pay upwards of $28 a kilogram for processed meat, where significant mass is retained, fluid engineered for margin. Examine Bird's Eye Ocean Selections crumbed fish fillets from Simplot, Australia. Coastal packaging suggests pristine ocean catch tossed in golden crumbs. In truth, fish content often sits below 60%, with the rest made of wheat flour batter, canola oil, yeast and thickeners. In the oven, crumb expands into a thick crust while the inner fillet shrinks into an indistinct grey flake. Laboratory assessments by choice show crumbed seafood categories frequently charge premium wild catch rates for cheap processed flour. Look at San Remo gluten-free pasta, marketed to consumers managing digestive sensitivities. San Remo commands major shelf space, but this formulation replaces durum wheat with cornstarch, soy flour and emulsifier 47-1. In boiling water, the pot turns into a milky starch slurry, leaving fragile strands that disintegrate under sauce. At $4.50 a box, you pay triple the price of conventional pasta for industrial starches that leave you spiked with refined carbohydrates 20 minutes later. Next is Gravox Traditional Gravy Liquid Pouch from Kraft Heinz. Aussie roasts rely on this pouch for an instant dinner upgrade. Rather than slow-cooked beef drippings and aromatics, primary ingredients are water, thickener 1422, hydrolyzed vegetable protein, and caramel color 150C. It coats the tongue in a gelatinous gloss with an MSG-heavy tang that dries the palate. You pay over $3 for thickened, salted water dyed to look like pan juices. CO Insider. Master Foods butter chicken recipe base jar from Mars Food Australia. Families reach for it expecting slow-simmered Indian spices, garlic and cream. Turn the jar around and leading components are water, tomato paste, sugar and modified maize starch, with whole spices trailing in tiny percentages. The sauce tastes like sweet tomato ketchup laced with citric acid and a hint of cumin rather than a braised curry. Paying $5 for sweetened modified starch is a steep convenience tax for 15 minutes of saved prep. Turn to Continental Cuppa Soup Cream of Chicken from Unilever. Iconic adverts framed this yellow box as the quintessential warming office snack. When dissolved in hot water, you drink maltodextrin, cornstarch, vegetable oil and salt, with chicken powder under 1%. It smells artificial, clinging to the mug with a greasy yellow film and leaving a gritty, MSG-laden coating on the tongue. You pay $60 per kilogram for salty cornstarch perfumed with synthetic poultry aroma. Consider Primo Chorizo from JBS Australia, the world's largest meat processor. Real Spanish chorizo relies on coarse pork cuts, natural casing, pimenton, and months of ambient air curing. Primo delivers an ultra-fine, mechanically emulsified paste packed into collagen casings, pumped with preservative 250 and sodium erythorbate to accelerate turnover. Fried in a skillet, it releases a puddle of orange grease while the casing splits into a tough ribbon. It is an industrial hot dog injected with smoke flavor, sold at specialty continental prices. Look at Latina Fresh Creamy Carbonara Pasta Sauce from General Mills in the chilled case. The label implies scratch-made gourmet quality, yet the tub contains water, cream, modified starches, bacon offcuts, and mineral salts engineered for extended shelf life. Heated over pasta, you get wallpaper paste texture with synthetic smoky flavor coating your palate like silicone. Paying $6.50 for chemically stabilized starch paste is a brutal trade-off when genuine carbonara requires only eggs, cured pork, and cheese. In the health food aisle, examine Carmen's Gourmet Protein Bars. Carmen's leverages a boutique Australian founding story to charge wellness prices. However, many bars rely on soy protein isolates, soluble corn fiber, and glycerol humectants to hit macro targets cheaply. The bar has a dense texture reminiscent of damp cardboard, sticking to molars with an artificial sweetener aftertaste. Paying $4 per bar means paying nearly $80 a kilogram for soy isolate bound with cheap humectants. Consider Praise Traditional Mayonnaise from Goodman Fielder. While authentic mayonnaise is an emulsion of whole eggs, mustard, and oil, Praise relies on water, vegetable oil, sugar, and food acids, with whole egg at minimal percentages. The texture is unnervingly thick, glossy, and sweet, behaving like dessert pudding rather than a savory condiment. You pay over $6 a bottle for sweetened water and seed oil stabilized with xanthan gum. Now examine Golden Circle orange fruit drink from Kraft Heinz. Positioned alongside whole juices, the word drink does immense legal heavy lifting. It contains roughly 25% fruit juice concentrate reconstituted with water, followed by added sugar and acidity regulators. It hits the throat with an aggressive citrus bite and sticky sugar film that leaves kids crashing shortly after. You pay $4 for tap water sweetened with bulk concentrate. Now, for the heavyweight deceptions on Australian shelves, look at Woolworths free-range eggs 12-pack, 700 grams. Woolworths markets these cartons with pastoral graphics and the prominent label free range. Yet under the Australian National Information Standard and documented by choice, these eggs can come from barns stocking up to 10,000 hens per hectare, nearly 7 times more crowded than the CSIRO benchmark of 1,500 birds. In the skillet, the pale yolk flattens and watery albumin spreads due to barn feeding and rapid turnover. You pay up to $6.50 a dozen, funding an industrial mega facility where birds rarely touch open grass. Next is the phantom farm deception exposed by ABC Four Corners, exemplified by Thomas Ducks. Sliced prosciutto and artisan dips, owned by Woolworths Group. Packaging features heritage colors and rustic aesthetics mimicking an independent providor. In reality, Thomas Ducks is a proprietary trademark owned by Woolworths to capture gourmet margins without displaying a supermarket logo. You pay up to $45 a kilogram for deli goods, running through the same commercial supply chains as generic budget brands 2 shelves below. Sion Cider, Coles Bakery stone-baked sourdough Vienna, sold under signage proclaiming baked fresh in store. Customers inhale the aroma and assume a baker was kneading dough at dawn. As exposed by consumer investigations, these loaves are manufactured in automated plants, par-baked, snap-frozen for weeks, and freighted in boxes for a quick reheat in local ovens. Because the dough contains commercial yeast, vinegar, and malt flour instead of a wild 48-hour starter, the bread turns rubbery by day 2 and lacks the digestive benefits of slow fermentation. Look at Woolworths macro grass-fed Australian beef mince. The label makes an emotional promise for clean-eating shoppers. Under standard industry definitions, cattle can spend their lives on pasture and still be moved to feedlots for grain finishing in final months before slaughter to boost marbling and weight. The mince cooks down into a heavy pool of liquid and yellow fat, lacking the deep iron richness of pasture-finished beef. You pay $22 a kilogram for an ambiguous label hiding a feedlot finish. Finally, the most pervasive deception. Woolworths select 100% pure Australian honey. Honey is a global food fraud hotspot, and Australia is not immune. In 2018, a joint investigation by Fairfax Media and the ABC sent commercial honey samples to the Quality Services International Laboratory in Germany for nuclear magnetic resonance testing. 12 out of 28 blended samples were flagged as adulterated with cheap syrups like rice or beet syrup, despite passing older domestic testing. Pure raw honey crystallizes into a cloudy spread over time as glucose precipitates. Adulterated commercial honey remains clear and runny for years. Squeezing that bottle over morning porridge means paying top dollar for syrup-diluted sweetener masquerading as the work of Australian bees. Right, here comes the part that made watching this far worth it. You do not need to swear off grocery shopping or live on a remote homestead to feed your family real, uncompromised food. Genuine producers exist on Australian shelves right now, proving that real ingredients, honest welfare standards, and true craftsmanship can still be found. Start with the breakfast staple where transparency wins. Honest Eggs Company. Pasture-raised eggs available across independent grocers, Harris Farm Markets, and selected supermarkets. Unlike industrial free-range operations packing 10,000 birds per hectare in sheds, Honest Eggs Company operates on Victorian pastures with a verified stocking density under 30 hens per hectare. Mobile chicken coops are towed across paddocks weekly, allowing the flock to forage for native grasses, seeds, and insects. In the skillet, the difference is undeniable. The yolk sits high and deep orange, while the egg white holds tight without weeping thin liquid. At roughly $9.50 for 12, it costs about $3 more than home brands, working out to a 25-cent difference per egg, a justified investment in genuine regenerative farming. For bread, skip par-baked industrial loaves and pick up Sonoma Bakery artisan sourdough at Harris Farm Markets, boutique grocers, and independent IGAs. Sonoma, founded in regional New South Wales, has spent over 2 decades perfecting slow fermentation using unbleached sustainable flour, filtered water, Australian sea salt, and living sourdough starter. The dough undergoes a natural 36-hour cold fermentation, breaking down gluten structures and developing lactic and acetic acidity without commercial yeast or vinegar. A Sonoma miche or country white loaf features a blistered crust that crackles under your knife, revealing an airy crumb smelling nutty and fermented. It costs around $8.50 a loaf, but because real sourdough is dense and nutrient-rich, 2 slices keep you satisfied for hours without a mid-morning crash. For pantry oils, Cobram Estate Everyday Extra Virgin Olive Oil is the gold standard on standard Woolworths and Coles shelves. Grown and cold-pressed in the Murray Valley and regional Victoria, Cobram Estate crushes olives within hours of harvesting, preserving delicate polyphenols. Their oils consistently pass testing by the NSW Department of Primary Industries, demonstrating ultra-low free fatty acidity and 0 adulteration. A sip reveals fresh cut grass aroma, followed by a peppery tickle in the throat, confirming active oleocanthal compounds. At $14 for 500 millilitres, it delivers award-winning quality for roughly 28 cents per cooking serve, suiting every household wanting cardiovascular protection and rich culinary flavour. For dairy lovers seeking whole food nutrition, look for Baramba Organics Pure Whole Milk at Harris Farm, IGA, and Health Grocers. Produced on certified organic family farms in the Border Rivers region of Queensland, this milk comes from pasture-grazed cows raised without synthetic pesticides, growth hormones, or routine antibiotics. Baramba uses low-temperature pasteurization and leaves milk unhomogenized, allowing a thick plug of natural dairy cream to settle at the top. It feels velvety and rich, carrying a delicate sweet grassiness that industrial processing strips away. At approximately $4.50 for 2 litres, it costs barely $1 more than private label milk, turning your daily flat white into genuine farmstead quality. If you love pure honey, seek out Beechworth Honey Bee Core's 100% Australian honey across major Australian supermarkets. Beechworth Honey is an independent family-owned operation in regional Victoria with beekeeping heritage spanning over 140 years. Every batch is independently tested and traceable to accredited Australian beekeepers working native eucalypt forests. The jar reveals an earthy, floral bouquet of red gum and yellow box nectar, with a smooth amber body that naturally crystallizes over winter. Priced around $8 for 400 grams, it costs roughly 20 cents per spoonful, ensuring authentic Australian pollen and enzymes without imported syrup. Finally, for red meat, look for Greenham Cape Grim grass-fed and finished beef through quality butchers and premium IGAs nationwide. Raised on pristine pastures of northwestern Tasmania, Cape Grim cattle roam on open grass their entire lives, certified strictly under the pasture-fed cattle assurance system with 0 grain finishing, hormones, or antibiotics. The meat displays a deep ruby red colour with creamy yellow fat marbling, reflecting a pure chlorophyll diet. In the pan, it sears to a mahogany crust without boiling in water, releasing robust beef flavour that needs only coarse salt. Choosing genuine pasture-finished beef means every dollar supports uncompromised animal welfare and pure nutrition. Now that you know how the supermarket machine operates, here is your quick-fire toolkit to protect your wallet and your health every single time you step into a grocery store. Take a screenshot of these 6 rules before your next shopping trip. First, flip every package over and look for the specific percentage declaration right after the headline ingredient. If a product calls itself almond milk or chicken soup, check whether the named whole food sits above 20% or lingers below 5%. Second, treat marketing adjectives like artisan, traditional, farmhouse, and natural as pure legal camouflage. In Australian food labelling, these words carry 0 mandatory compliance standards and are designed purely to evoke pastoral warmth. Third, examine the fine print near the barcode on egg cartons and meat trays. On eggs, ignore the bold free-range stamp on the front and look exclusively for the stocking density number, aiming for 1,500 birds per hectare or fewer, rather than the legal maximum of 10,000. Fourth, inspect the country of origin bar chart underneath the green and gold kangaroo logo, rather than trusting the silhouette itself. The bar chart explicitly reveals the actual percentage of Australian ingredients versus cheap imported bulk commodities transformed locally. Fifth, keep your personal ingredient ceiling strictly under 5 recognisable whole foods for everyday staples. If a sauce, bread, or dairy product contains 15 ingredients packed with numbers in brackets, mineral salts, and gums, put it back on the shelf. Sixth, test your cooking oils and raw honeys at home. True extra virgin olive oil must deliver a peppery, bitter bite that catches the throat, and genuine raw honey will naturally crystallise and turn cloudy in your pantry over cooler winter months. The fundamental takeaway is that supermarket corporations maximize profit margins by mass-producing industrial approximations of genuine food. You do not have to be a helpless victim of packaging design once you replace blind trust in front-of-pack marketing with a 2-second glance at the back panel. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this investigation. If you found this breakdown valuable, share it with your family, your housemates, or anyone who still buys groceries on pure autopilot under supermarket fluorescent lights. Drop a comment down below and tell me honestly, which of the products we broke down today is sitting in your pantry or fridge right now? We read through every single response to uncover what investigations to tackle next. Tap subscribe, hit the bell notification, and demand real food, not clever marketing.